black cod, prime-grade bluefin tuna, Alaskan halibut, and jumbo tiger prawns. Just seeing these items on the menu was enough to make my head spin. We came to an upscale seafood restaurant that screamed fine dining. It was a special dinner to celebrate our son, Justin, getting into university. As we admired the long list of menu items, none of which listed prices, we chatted and laughed together. Then, out of nowhere, my husband Robert's boss and her family suddenly crashed our gathering. His boss's name is Helena, and she would often make Robert pick up the tab whenever she ate out with him, stuffing herself without restraint. Her whole family was there, ordering expensive, market-priced dishes one after another. I was quite afraid that Helena would hand Robert her bill again.
I can't take this anymore. I just want to leave.
Just as I was sinking into despair, the owner suddenly stepped up with determination. My name is Claire Tanner, and I'm 47 years old. My son, Justin, is 20. After years of grueling studies, he finally earned a spot at a prestigious university. Although it took him a little longer than expected, it was well worth the effort. Justin was never a naturally gifted student, but he worked incredibly hard thanks to the encouragement from his high school mentor, Mr. Matthews.
The only one who decides your limits is you. If you stop challenging yourself, you'll wither away,
Mr. Matthews often said. Believing in those words, Justin pushed himself to his limits and beyond. As his parents, Robert and I couldn't have been prouder to support him in his journey. Justin pursued a degree in business administration with the goal of becoming a management consultant. He had even declared that he wanted to help rebuild the country's economy from the ground up. I knew that deep down, he also just wanted to ensure a better future for us. That thought alone made me smile. Call me a doting mother. What parent wouldn't be proud of their son? Anyway, let's go back to the main story. To celebrate Justin's achievement, we decided to treat him to one of the upscale seafood restaurants in town. We were led to a table. I glanced over at the menu on the table, but there were no prices listed. A shiver ran down my spine.
There aren't any prices on the menu.
Right, that means their market price.
Robert and I whispered to each other. That would have been fine as long as we didn't order anything crazy. The menu on the table only indicated that a course meal started at around $50 per person. That sounded safe enough. For the three of us, that'd be $150. By adding in drinks and a couple of side dishes, we should be looking at around $200 total. I quickly did the math in my head. I had always been frugal and never stepped foot in a place like this before. When Robert suggested having a celebratory dinner, I was hesitant, but this seemed manageable. First, he ordered some wine. Since Justin is an adult, we let him decide whether he wanted to drink alcohol. Just as the server brought over our wine, the restaurant door suddenly swung open.
Good evening.
As the owner and the server greeted in unison, a family walked in.
Oh, Robert.
The moment we recognized them, Robert and I held our breath. It was Robert's boss.
I heard you're celebrating your son's acceptance into university. Congratulations, young man.
Thank you.
The one addressing Justin so casually was Robert's boss, Helena Haynes, the marketing director at his company. We even called her Ms. Hyena behind her back. Her sharp, mean-looking eyes and rigid square face said it all.
Hi there, long time no see.
The husband of Ms. Hyena turned his tanned face toward me. He was actually an instructor at the gym I went to. He was a muscle-bound show-off who constantly flirted with female members. He was pretty much universally disliked. Robert and I secretly called him Mr. Toasty. On that day, Mr. Toasty had brought his son, Brad, along. Brad was just a puppet controlled by his parents. He was a middle schooler, sullen, quiet, and gloomy. I'd call him Little Bunny Boy. So there we had Ms. Hyena, Mr. Toasty, and Little Bunny Boy. What a family they were. Calling them a circus troupe might sound amusing, but there was nothing cute about it. Ms. Hyena said to the owner,
All right then. I'll have the black cod. Brad, you should try some too.
I think I'll go for the seared fatty tuna. Brad, you should give it a try.
And just like that, they were off. One after another, they ordered the most expensive items from the market price menu.
Oh my, this snapper is just divine.
How about we have the snapper seared next?
Classic Mr. Toasty. It seemed like he loved to have everything seared. Then, as if on cue, he glanced at me and gave me a wink. A shiver ran down my spine. To make matters worse, Mr. Toasty took off his jacket, revealing a tank top underneath. He started flexing his muscles, deliberately making them twitch. For the love of God, please stop. As I was looking over the menu at our table, the server suddenly placed a glass of wine in front of me.
I didn't order this.
When Robert said so to the owner's wife, she replied,
It's from that gentleman over there.
I turned my head and saw Mr. Toasty waving at us. According to her, it was a high-end wine from Frank Family Vineyards. Although the price wasn't listed on the menu, Robert whispered to me that it was ridiculously expensive. This was the usual occurrence.
My dear, you're looking a little pale.
Ms. Hyena's voice nearly made a blood vessel pop in my head. This couple had a nasty habit of ordering whatever they wanted and then conveniently forgetting to pay. Robert already looked resigned to his fate. There was no way he would have told Ms. Hyena about our son's university acceptance celebration, so she must have overheard it from his coworkers. Since she was his boss, Robert had no choice but to put up with it. Yet, I sure as hell didn't, and neither did my son. Justin just sat there, with a puzzled look on his face. He was confused, unaware of the extortionist circus act happening in front of him. I first met Mr. Toasty at a training gym I visited with my group of mom friends. With his artificially tanned skin from a tanning salon, he looked less healthy and more sleazy. His favorite catchphrase was,
Muscles don't lie.
Furthermore, with his suspiciously white teeth, whether naturally perfect or courtesy of a mouthpiece, he'd flash an unsettling grin. It was at the gym's social gathering that I found out Mr. Toasty's wife was Robert's boss, Ms. Hyena. Mr. Toasty introduced Ms. Hyena, saying,
This is my wife.
Oh my, you're Robert's wife.
What a coincidence.
I played along, but I already had a bad feeling about it. Robert had told me plenty of horror stories about his dreadful boss, Ms. Hyena. It didn't take long for her true colors to start showing. The social gathering took place at a cafe, with each person paying a $20 fee. When the event wrapped up and everyone stood to leave, the moment we tried to step out the door.
Excuse me, but the bill hasn't been settled yet.
That was when the server stopped my mom friend Linda and me as we were the last ones to leave.
Huh? What are you saying?
There were 6 participants, including me. 6 times $20 equals $120. We had already handed all the money to the organizer, Mr. Toasty. However, the server told us nothing had been paid. Linda and I exchanged glances. Linda rushed to the parking lot to find Mr. Toasty and Ms. Hyena, only to return, panic-stricken, saying,
They ran off.
I couldn't wrap my head around it. With no other option, the two of us split the bill. Of course, we were furious. Naturally, we confronted Mr. Toasty later, but he played dumb.
Oh, I left the bill to my wife.
That unpleasant mess marked the end of the gathering. The next event was a family camping trip. Mr. Toasty had a habit of cozying up to the moms at the gym, constantly bragging about what a great dad he was at home. Showing off his sweaty muscles, he played around Ms. Hyena and their son, Brad. None of the other families brought kids, yet there he was, in a tank top, eagerly setting up the barbecue grill with a huge grin. He took over the tasks meant for the other husbands, then laughed loudly, saying,
See? You guys just don't have enough muscle. See, muscles never let you down.
It was downright obnoxious. Most of the delicious, expensive meat that was bought with everyone's contributions ended up in the bellies of their freeloading circus act. Even Brad, despite being lanky, ate like a horse. I was sure the hyena family hadn't chipped in a dime for this barbecue either. They were just mooching off everyone.
Ms. Hyena always steals other people's work.
Robert muttered. Apparently, she had an atrocious reputation at the office. Since Robert worked directly under Ms. Hyena, he knew exactly how she operated. She sucked up to upper management while taking all the credit for her subordinates' work. She was a typical toxic boss. She always dragged her employees out for meals but conveniently left before the check arrived. In the end, her subordinates would scramble to split the bill, and naturally, they despised her for it.
Every single one of my projects ends up being credited to Ms. Hyena.
Robert's frustration was endless. If anyone pissed Ms. Hyena off, they'd get stuck with nothing but menial tasks. She wouldn't bully everyone, but just a select few, isolating them on purpose. At the gym, Ms. Hyena had Mr. Toasty organize these gatherings under her orders, and our family was always the target.
I really like you, Robert.
Ms. Hyena once said so with a fake smile. Was that because she saw us as her personal ATM? Robert played along because, if he didn't, he'd be left out of important projects. She robbed people of their achievements, flattered upper management, and drained her subordinates. That was outright abuse of power. Seriously, it's peak Ms. Hyena's behavior. Her ruthless survival tactics left a trail of casualties. That night, that same toxic reality loomed over my son's university acceptance celebration. As I stewed over it all, an assortment of other dishes started arriving at our table.
Did we order this?
I asked Robert. He simply smiled and nodded. He had planned this celebration, after all. He must have arranged a set course in advance. So I wasn't too worried about the cost.
Oh my, that's quite a modest dish.
The one who butted in was Ms. Hyena. The plate was small indeed, but that wasn't the issue. Brad's eyes lit up as he ate what looked like a piece of white fish, probably black cod.
Is that one over there also prime-grade bluefin tuna?
Mr. Toasty pointed to our table while chewing on a piece of seared prime-grade fatty tuna.
No, but it's still bluefin tuna.
The owner replied. Mr. Toasty and Ms. Hyena burst out laughing at the same time. It was an obnoxious, grating laugh.
Coming all the way here and not eating prime-grade bluefin tuna? What a waste.
Mr. Toasty sneered.
Well, they do have a big family.
Ms. Hyena added with a smug smile. These two were absolutely insufferable.
Brad, since we're here, why don't you try the best? Want to have it seared like mine?
And just like that, Brad started devouring every dishes set in front of him, stuffing his face like an elephant at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
This black cod is divine and makes me crave gin. What's the most expensive one you have?
Hearing Ms. Hyena ask for the most expensive one made my blood pressure spike. Who the hell did she think she was?
We have Rocky Mountain Gin and St. George Spirits Gin, among others.
The owner replied.
Oh, I can't do strong one, so we'll go Rocky Mountain Gin with soda.
Ms. Hyena said. Rocky Mountain Gin? It's quite fitting for her.
Then I'll take St. George Spirits Gin with ice.
Mr. Toasty chimed in. The two clinked their glasses. I was fuming. I didn't even want to think about what their tab was racking up to. It sent chills just thinking about it. At that moment, the owner's wife brought out another platter. The presentation was stunning, almost like an art piece. It should have been delicious, but I couldn't taste a damn thing. I even felt sick. I was done. I just wanted to leave. At the very least, I had to make sure Justin finished his meal in peace.
This is from a guest at another table.
The owner's wife said, setting down a bottle of wine. It looked like cake bread. I wanted to hurl it right back, but Justin politely smiled at Mr. Toasty and took a sip.
Screw it. Whatever happens, happens.
I thought. I downed a glass of cake bread myself.
Really, that was delicious. Well then, thanks for the meal.
Ms. Hyena said.
This was the best seafood dish I've had in a long time. Do you agree, Brad?
With a slight buzz from the alcohol, Ms. Hyena and Mr. Toasty looked beyond satisfied. Brad, on the other hand, ignored them and sipped on his ginger ale. Then, the freeloading circus troupe got up from the table. Ms. Hyena gave a quick nod to the owner and said,
Put it on Robert's tab.
My head was about to explode from this same damn stunt every single time. I sat there, eating meals that had lost all its flavor and feeling more and more pissed off. Then, the owner suddenly barked at them in a cold, firm voice.
Hold it right there. I'm calling the police.
Huh? What are you talking about?
The hyena couple gasped in unison. What kind of scene was this turning into? Robert and I glanced over at the owner. Everyone in the restaurant seemed to be holding their breath.
Well, the bill was supposed to be covered by Robert.
The issue isn't about the bill.
The owner interrupted. His voice was as cold as ice. From behind the counter, a young woman stepped forward. She was the one who first brought us our wine. Now that I thought about it, she had disappeared to the back of the restaurant after that. As soon as Mr. Toasty laid eyes on her, his face changed color.
You tried to flirt with my daughter, didn't you?
To my surprise, she seemed to be the owner's daughter. Mr. Toasty visibly turned pale as the owner's furious words cut through the air. His mouth opened and closed with no sound coming out.
You're the owner's daughter?
Mr. Toasty said finally. Apparently, she was a member of his gym. Mr. Toasty had a long history of harassing women. There was more than one mom in our group who had been a target. What he did included touching without consent, borderline sexual assault, leaning in, and whispering disgusting things in their ears.
He cornered me in a private room.
The owner's daughter choked out the words, her voice full of anguish.
What proof do you have?
Mr. Toasty's response was exactly what you'd expect from a guilty man. Later, we'd find out that he had incriminating photos on his phone. It was absolutely despicable.
I'm sure there are more victims because I'm one of them.
I finally forced myself to speak up. Both Robert and Justin turned to look at me, their expressions darkening. I could feel their anger toward Mr. Toasty solidifying. He had touched me before, more than once. Furthermore, he had tried to get me alone, whispering things I never wanted to hear. I never told that to Robert because ignoring Mr. Toasty seemed like the best way to avoid worse harassment. Hearing my words, Mr. Toasty's face was covered in sweat. As expected of Mr. Toasty, his dark past was starting to come to light. His usual tan skin was turning pale. I guessed that even someone sunburned could turn extremely pale like this.
It is enough. I'm not sticking around for this. If the cops get involved, I'm out.
Ms. Hyena snapped. This wasn't the first time she had to deal with her husband's womanizing. Her pride seemed more important than anything else.
How about we charge him with sexual assault? While we're at it, let's add tonight's attempt at dining and dashing as well.
The owner's voice was eerily calm as he turned to Ms. Hyena.
Don't make it sound so bad. I told you, the bill was supposed to be covered by Robert.
The Tanner family already paid in advance.
What did you say?
This time, both Ms. Hyena and I spoke in unison. I leaned in and whispered to Robert.
Is that true?
He nodded slightly. I later learned that the whole meal, including drinks, was a set menu costing about $300. So, there was never a need to worry about the cost. Maybe it was supposed to be a surprise, but I wished he had told me sooner. I should have taken my time to enjoy the food. I just felt frustrated.
Well, your family had black cod, red snapper, premium bluefin tuna, medium fatty tuna, extra fatty tuna, Alaskan halibut, and jumbo tiger prawns, spot prawn, and so on. The wine selection included Frank Family, Cake Bread, Stag's Leap Carrier, Rocky Mountain Gin, and St. George Spirits Gin. Altogether, that comes to $980 in total.
The owner said to Mr. Toasty. Just hearing that amount freaked me out.
Wait a second. There's no way I can pay that much.
Mr. Tanner was introduced by Mr. Matthews, and we were told there would be 3 of them.
I never expected the owner to mention the name of Justin's old mentor, Mr. Matthews. Robert had suggested this dinner, but it was in fact Mr. Matthews who wanted to treat Justin to this fine dining experience. Everything clicked into place.
As for the rest of you, we were not informed about your presence. I believe it's only fair for each person to pay for their own meal.
The owner stood firm, radiating authority. The savior we didn't realize was right in front of us. Miss Hyena looked flustered, her face twitching as she struggled to find a response. That was a direct hit as she knew it. As expected from a restaurant recommended by Mr. Matthews, the owner was sharp as well. Even Robert looked like he was sweating bullets. Then, suddenly, Mr. Toasty bolted from the restaurant. Right at that moment, a police car pulled up.
Grab that guy. He's a dine and dash thief.
Justin took off after him. With the officers watching, Justin closed the distance in an instant and tackled Mr. Toasty to the ground. Justin had spent 3 years on the high school track team, specializing in sprints. Mr. Toasty, on the other hand, was all show, just a guy covered in useless gym muscles.
Damn it!
That was the last, pathetic cry of Mr. Toasty. It was too bad that his muscles had betrayed him. As I watched Justin and the officers pin him down, one song popped into my head. That was Dona Dona. It's an old song about a calf being led to market, but in this case, it was just a fitting metaphor for Mr. Toasty being dragged off in disgrace. There was no sadness there, just satisfaction. The cornered Ms. Hyena stared with a pale face at the Mr. Toasty being subdued.
Oh, that reminds me. Wait a second.
A thought suddenly struck me, and I turned to Ms. Hyena, staring right at her square-shaped face.
By the way, about the membership fees we've been paying for our social club, where exactly has that money been going?
While Ms. Hyena couldn't be described as either crying or smiling, her earlobe earrings were shining. Come to think of it, I noticed that she always wore different earrings, which made me suspect that she might be pocketing our membership fees. She was more like a scammer, not just a freeloader. She fell silent, unable to come up with an excuse. So, what happened to the two of them after that? Let's start with Mr. Toasty. It turned out that his crimes weren't limited to harassing women at the gym. They involved affairs, secret children, and other dirt that kept piling up. The inevitable showdown with Ms. Hyena was as messy as expected. After a brutal divorce, Mr. Toasty was left paying child support all over the place. Honestly, he was always a shady guy. It was no surprise he ended up a full-blown criminal. Next, let's talk about Ms. Hyena. First, she had to cough up the money for the restaurant bill and then return every cent of our club's funds. It didn't end there as word of the restaurant fiasco spread quickly. The night of the incident, several high-profile business executives and corporate representatives had been in the restaurant. As a result, her contracts were pulled, her reputation was shattered, and she faced a demotion and a major pay cut. In the end, the Hyena family was transferred to a small town far away. According to Robert, she had been keeping a low profile ever since. There was barely a whisper about her. Later, I heard that she ended up quitting her job and retreating to some rural backwater. What about our family? With Ms. Hyena gone from the planning department, the employees' morale shot through the roof. Robert got a promotion, and the employees seemed more motivated than ever, a win-win all around. Justin had seen firsthand what a terrible example Ms. Hyena was and became even more focused on his studies. He also joined the track team at university, probably gaining confidence from the way he chased down and tackled Mr. Toasty. That whole restaurant fiasco ended up being a turning point for both Robert and Justin. Looking back, I can't help but feel grateful. Now let me tell you about my current situation. The gym's social club was rebranded as the Ladies' Club, and I was put in charge. With Ms. Hyena gone, the place transformed from a cutthroat savanna into a peaceful flower field. Now, our meetings are nothing more than relaxed coffee breaks.
Oh, by the way, I heard that the new restaurant serves black cod.
That was Linda again, casually bringing it up. Hearing that fish name instantly reminded me of that dramatic night at the restaurant. I never really got to enjoy the expensive dishes, which still bothered me a little.
Well then, why don't we have our next meeting there?
Everyone smiled and agreed. I'd prefer no more fine dining. I was done with eating in fear, constantly worried about the price tag. My stomach let out a small growl after a long gym training session. Living within my means and not pretending to be something I'm not. That was my own survival lesson, which I had learned from Ms. Hyena.